You retired too?
Not me. I'm in my prime.
Three, two, one, record. Do you see the recording thing on your side
I
too?
do. Yep.
All right, sweet. All right. Well, Dr. McCallum, I am freshly landed in Lynchburg, Virginia, and it's way better here than I expected. It's way better here than I expected. The Jiu Jitsu community was like just welcomed me with open arms. Like first day, I only like made a few connections just over social media, and it's just been really awesome for like the last. I've been here since um, really late on like the 30th. So I've been here. Gosh, oh man, it's already been 2 weeks. Doesn't even feel like that, but yeah. So that's been great. But
It's wild how that works out, though, right? I mean, like,
yeah,
I can speak of my experiences like that too, having to get up and move numerous times to pursue medicine. Sure, of course, in a place like New York City, but then also when I moved to Myrtle Beach, I had gone down to like Orlando a few times, but in general, like when you go to like this new unfamiliar place, and then not to be like the corny guy, like jiu-jitsu is so amazing or the jiu-jitsu community is so amazing, but it really is. Like it's just like you almost automatically get this like community and friend group, and you have access to all these giving people out of nowhere all of a sudden, and of course you just moved, so it couldn't come at a better time, right? I'm sure like your jiu-jitsu academy has a couple other doctors or lawyers or handymen, or not to say you should take advantage of those people, but hey, they're there if you need them, and I feel like they're going to be pretty giving, uh, just because
yeah,
you train jiu-jitsu with them, right?
yeah. It's like jujitsu is also, it creates a certain type of connection, it seems like, because it's not quite the same as building a friendship or a connection outside of jujitsu. It's like within jujitsu, there is like a set of unspoken rules about the kind of connections you can have, but you can make those kinds of connections extremely fast.
Yeah.
And a lot of time there's a business overlap with those, there's networking overlap with those, and then there's like understanding credibility and work ethic. It's like pretty easy to get things like job references in a
Right.
lot of cases. I guess it depends on who you are, but those are things I've always seen. So yeah, like gosh, one thing I'm looking for is like a dog sitter, so I can actually like travel and fly back to San Diego and SoCal so I can come
You'll
train with
probably
you.
find
Yeah,
But no, I mean, I agree with you. Yeah, the connections. I mean, it's I don't think we start jujitsu like with the intention or the hope that we're gonna network and meet people that will help us advance in our career. Um, but weirdly enough, it happens quite a bit. I know people who's happened to. I'd say it's happened to me myself. Probably landed a couple of residency interviews just by word of mouth. You know, um, so it has definitely benefited me. But again, it's like you said, like it's a nice surprise because I think you go into these transitions with like kind of low expectations. And then, obviously you're exceeding expectations when you get there and you meet the people and you see the quality of training and the quality of people. Um, and isn't that like that's the key to happiness, right? Having low expectations and then exceeding the expectations.
oh yeah, big time, big time. Like there's so much that you about like just Lynchburg that is not on the internet, and I've got I think there's 10 or 11 black belts at the gym that
Oh,
just like sort of adopted me.
right.
And I mean, I've only trained with like three of them, and
Wow.
those are great roles. They have like a couple guys my size that love to do no gi, and then they have like an MMA team, so like some really scrappy, some really big dudes too. And I haven't
Right.
even explored like the wrestling community yet, and it's it just happens super quick. And then, so one thing, this is like something that you and I talked about that was not recorded. But we were talking about, like getting a black belt, receiving a black belt promotion and what kind of doors that could open in this context. And I remember you really encouraging me, like, do not put off your brown belt. That's at least consider like what having a black belt means, like
Right.
to the rest of the country and like all the other places you're going to be. You're going to want to have opportunities to like set up your own training and, be recognized as someone who has a lot to give and a lot to offer in that sense. And you're 100% correct. So I'm matting out my living room, and people are already super interested. They're super supportive. They're like, how many people do you want? We're going to have good bodies in there. And I'm like, I told them, like, we're going to be like jiu-jitsu moonshiners. We're going to have very distilled jiu-jitsu, probably have like a group of 3 or like a group of 6 or something at some point.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, I it shouldn't be that way though, if I'm being honest, right? I mean, we can agree, like I'm sure you have come across purple belts, brown belts who are so good and so high level and have so much to offer, and they're just as good or sometimes even better training than a lot of black belts, right? And you wish that people would see that. And, I don't want to be overly critical, but yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, it's just the way it is. They don't understand how, I think a lot of the jiu-jitsu community doesn't understand how like the belt ranking or belt promotion system works, how it's different for different people, right? Like if you have competitive aspirations, you might be like a blue or a purple belt, but you might be just sick. Like you might have a very, very good understanding of jiu-jitsu and be a very, very tough role, but hey, you're professor, sees the potential, wants you to score a bunch of points for the academy. So they might keep you a blue or purple belt or brown belt for a long time, right? Versus somebody else. And this isn't even wrong. Like somebody else, hey, their jiu-jitsu is not that big of a priority, or at least competing is not that big of a priority in their life. They're doing it more for the lifestyle or for a hobby. So yeah, they're gonna be promoted at a different rate and with different expectations. So I respect pretty much all black belts as long as they train, as long as they train consistently. I'm not, I understand that, some people have just a higher potential or higher understanding, like, it's not a judgment thing. It's just, hey, they're just naturally better and more, they're gifted, and that's fine. But what I'm saying is like, I think it is a little bit of a shame that like people just automatically look at somebody who's a brown belt and they kind of, don't give them the same appreciation or respect. And then like literally like one day apart, right? Like the next day they get promoted to black belt.
Yeah.
And then boom, now everything they say, it has so much more meaning. You know what I'm saying? Everything they're offering means so much more. And like, there's what the common saying in jiu-jitsu is what the belt only covers like, 2 inches above your ass or something like that. You got to cover the rest. So that is very true. But like, sorry, going back to, not to get on a tangent, but going back to what you were saying, yeah, I wish it wasn't that way. But yes, after experiencing what I had experienced, moving to a smaller, I guess, jiu-jitsu community, or moving to an area of the country that jiu-jitsu is not as saturated. I could tell the people there very much judged me on my belt, and so I showed up as a brown belt, and even though I was a good brown belt, they just still only saw me as a brown belt, right?
Yeah, you're still half, you're not even, you're like half cooked. You're still you're unfinished business in some
Right.
weird sense, because they're bringing whatever, well, because most people that do jujitsu know like extraordinarily little about it, like,
Right.
because it's like the skill and the amount of time that people can devote before they get injured or they get, pulled away from it. Very few people make it to black belt. So it's like most of them are dealing with like they're looking through a straw at the whole situation. And yeah.
Well, I'll tell you a quick funny story. Is like I moved to the area. I moved to Myrtle Beach, right? I'm not gonna name names because some of these people are my friends, but like I showed up to Myrtle Beach as a brown belt, right? And I start rolling with anybody and everybody who roll with me, right? So then I train with a couple of the black belts in the area, right? And like, not trying to brag or anything like that, but I'm training with these black belts, and I'm a brown belt, and I'm beating them in the rolls, right? Like taking their backs, tapping them, whatever it may be, right? And the reality is this: some of them I was much younger than, right? These are older black belts, or maybe hey, they're out of their competitive years, or whatever it may be, right? So I have an understanding. I think even they have an understanding of why I'm winning these roles, right? And that's fine. But the people who are watching the role, right? The students that are watching the role, like the blue belts, the purple belts, and they're watching their sensei get their back taken and tapped and stuff like that. It was like, whoa, what's going on? Why is this brown belt beating this black belt? Like brown belts shouldn't be beating black belts, right?
It's not allowed. You can't do that.
Yeah. So anyway, so like that happens, that first, this happened numerous times, right? Because I was like shopping around, I was going to different academies, training with the black belt. They're not even coming in like a Ronin or anything like that, not even coming in to, beat them, just like, hey, respectfully rolling with them. But yeah, it's like doing a barrel and taking their back, or, what I'm saying, like omoplating them, like whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so anyways, that happens. I say, oh, wow, thank you so much. It was a great roll. I come back like a day or two later and they won't roll with me anymore. Right? They won't roll with me anymore because, hey, like you made me look bad in front of my students. And I, to some extent, like as much as I want to say, oh, that's messed up, or that's all your ego is, blah, blah, blah. I get it though. It makes sense because like that's me messing with their money, right? At that point, right? Like that's me, like right? Like, I mean, it sort of makes sense, right? They have established academies and they have like, their students see them in a certain light. And then here I am coming in, making them look bad or ruining that for them. So I understand. Now, I get my black belt a couple of weeks later, a couple of months later. I come back to Myrtle Beach, right? I come back, go to LA, get my black belt, come back to Myrtle Beach. All of a sudden, these people will train with me again, right?
That's I didn't see that coming. That's really interesting.
But it's crazy, right? It's so weird, but it's like, and then you could say, oh no, you go on this and that, but like it's just human nature, right? All of a sudden now, me being a black belt, whether it's a new black belt or a black belt for black belt, just me being a black belt and them being a black belt, really it takes away the pressure of them winning or losing the role, right? Because they lost to another black belt, right?
Yeah.
But if they lost to like a brown belt, like that's so much more detrimental. Now, how does that affect me? Like, sure, the reason it affected me, the reason I cared was because yes, like the couple of good roles that I would be able to get every week, people were saying no to me.
Right? Yeah.
So now like all of a sudden now my quality of training is not as good. Right. So like, that's why pretty quickly it made sense to me. Like, hey, I need to get my black belt. Like in order for me to optimize my training here in this small jiu-jitsu community, I need to optimize in order to optimize the training, I need to get my black belt, which is why like, my advice to you was, hey, get your black belt before you go out there. Just because, you don't want to, I could be wrong. There might've been open-minded people there. There might've been people who got it and understood it, but maybe not.
Yeah, definitely better. I think, given all of the context, it's like, what did I like? What did I have to gain? And this is a really unique situation. Like I would say I am a competitor. I'd also say a lot of people don't really believe that because I'm starting med school, which is another problem. But ultimately, like I had some say in what was going to happen and when, and even talked to my head coach Sloan about it. And I told him, I was like, I'm on the fence because I know how competitive this sport can be, and that's what I'm trying to do. And he's like, nah, bro, you don't get a choice. Like, just, well, you do, but we're doing this. And I was like, okay. So that was pretty much it. And yeah, but so now I'm here, and I'll never know what it would have been like to come out here and train as a brown belt. But yeah, it was definitely weird to like hit that milestone and then not even get to train as like one more time after getting promoted before I had to like pack up everything and leave and move to the other side of the country, and then train totally new people who only know me as this black belt from San Diego. Right. So the way that they see me, it's been it's obvious. They'll be like, oh, you're this new black belt that just moved here from San Diego, right? And I'm like, wow, yeah, I guess that's me, huh? Wow,
Yeah.
that's so, and
that's how they see you, and I'll be honest. I think that's good though. Like, sorry, like not speaking.
No, yeah, no, I agree, and I think that it's adding to the momentum of being able to just like have doors open and training opportunities and sort of organize around my lifestyle.
I agree. So the logistical side, of course, like, you can't overlook that. I think like that's something that I'll always say through my experience I learned. And to this day, I'm very much into the logistics of my week, like how like my training is going to look based upon my work schedule, based upon my patient load, all that. Because I realize that realistically, to improve, I have to have consistency in my training schedule, right, year round, right. And I think
Yeah.
you're going to realize that very quickly if you haven't already.
Oh, it's
But
so
I
true. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'll be honest, it's not just that though. Like, there's also the like mental and emotional side of it too, right? Now, here's the thing: like, you may not agree with me right now, but you will, I think, over time. You need right now, like as you go through this process, you need that source, like that stimuli, right? That stimulus is gonna force you to have something in the back of your mind that's gonna make you train, right? Now it could have been while you were still a brown belt, right? But I'm just speaking from my experience. When I was a brown belt and I started like residency, sure, I had motivation, but it wasn't the same. When I
Yeah.
got my black belt and I was like, holy shit, I'm a black belt, and I had competitive aspirations as a black belt, and I'm a resident in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, I was like, man, I cannot mess around. Like every workout, every training session, everything I eat, everything I drink, like, I mean, maybe it was me being really intense, but all of a sudden that everything mattered that much more. Right.
I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
And it's definitely added to the stress of this move significantly.
Yeah.
I find myself being a little bit hard on myself right now. And I'm like, wow, I need to be realistic. Like, I still have stuff in
It's good. No, no,
boxes.
no,
Like,
no, 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 no.
it's
I
intense,
disagree.
but
It's good. It's good that you're hard on yourself. Like, right now, sorry. I know like a lot of people say, no, like be good to yourself and like all that. And like, look, of course, there's a line where it's going too far. I'll be honest. I pushed that line. I almost broke myself mentally. Right.
I get sinus infections. Like, I'll get a sinus infection, and then that will become like this really, actually I got one while I was moving, and
Right.
so that was really a blast. But controlling the sinus infections, it's like injuries I've really got injuries under control. Sinus infections are the only thing that can stop me when I'm like
Okay.
really cruising and progressing and just getting into great shape. I get hit with a sinus infection, and that will set me back like two
Right.
weeks. Um,
Right.
and so coming out, I have to learn how to like, hey, you're feeling good, but you need to gradually like move this needle
Sure. Sure.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
like
I learned that the hard
slowly.
way.
Yeah, I'm still learning it. Like, I definitely got sick during the move, and then I'm here, and I'm like, okay, now don't get sick again, because
Right.
so my first day of school is on Tuesday.
Right. No, I mean, yeah. So I think you'll find that balance. But I'm sorry. I mean, like people could disagree with me. Like you have to understand, like you are trying to do something that very few to nobody does, right? Like nobody even tries this. And then most like I here's the thing, like looking back, a lot of people like cautioned me, right? And I'm sure you're getting that too, like, like,
Well,
like
yeah,
that's
we can't talk about them too much because it would just take up the rest of the podcast. But
right.
yeah,
No,
it's
I mean,
definitely happening.
yeah, to some extent, like they're not even wrong, right? Because like what is the fear, right? Like I've had people in my life tell me like, oh, like, like, hey, that's too much. Like you're setting yourself up for failure, or you're setting yourself up for, disappointment, right? But I think like if you want to have some level of success, whatever that may be, like you need to be kind of hard on yourself at this phase of your life. I think that's just my view. I know that sounds intense. Now,
I like
and
it.
like
It's true. Yeah, I agree with it completely.
right. And like so many people throughout the time, and even now, they tell me like, oh, you should be happy, like you should be proud of yourself, like you're competing with the full-time guys and you're doing well and you're fighting them well and and I'm sorry, like I might sound like a dick when I say this, but like that's what you think, right? That's what you think. That's as good as you think I could be. I know I could be a lot better, right? And like I still am that hard on myself, and I will continue to be, right? Just because like what I'm experiencing right now, like getting second place or wherever I'm landing in the field, it doesn't feel good enough just yet,
Mm.
and it didn't feel good enough throughout med school and residency. Like it just felt like I was falling short. Now if I kept looking up and going, oh, well, this is good enough, I should be happy with this. Like I understand that would make me feel good momentarily, but I know for a fact, looking back at it now, like I worked a lot harder and probably progressed a lot more because I had such a kind of mean mindset to myself, like it was like I was not mean to myself, but I was hard on myself, and I had to be because nobody else was going to be, right?
Yeah, that is true. Um, I got a little bit of an echo going for some reason. Anyway, but that it's true because I noticed like the moment someone finds out like, oh, you're starting med school, it's like, well, I'm done pushing you as an athlete. Like that's a judgment that can get handed down pretty easily. So you do have to take a lot of ownership if
Correct.
you want to stay in the fire. But I
Correct.
mean, I've been on this path just trying to get into school for 6 years, and it was
Right.
always taken away from my mat time. Like I just had so much time stolen from me in that regard. But I'm very happy to be in the situation I'm in now. And so
Sure.
there's like gratefulness is good. Like I'm grateful that I'm able to be here and to have the skills that I have and then to be in a
Right.
position to get better. I think the thing that I come back to is um, loving the thing that I love the most about grappling is the progression of the skill, the progression of understanding the different components of like performance, and then also just like learning things that I didn't even know existed, like
Sure.
discovering those unknown unknowns in within something that I'm pretty familiar with.
Right. But like you said it yourself, like taking ownership of that now is going to be more important than ever because, like you said, like it or not, there are going to be people, coaches, people
Oh yeah,
that could be helping you who are going to make that decision for you, right? There's people
yeah,
that are going to be deciding for you. There's people that are going to be, I'm telling you, even close friends of mine, had made decisions for me about oh, this is as far as he's supposed to go, or this is as good as he's supposed to be, right? To the point whether it was conscious or unconscious, I had coaches that were investing less time in me because they were like, well, he doesn't deserve it. He's like, he's going to be a doctor, right?
which is
And
weird
that's
because you're just a person that's like showing up to practice and like
right.
pushing themselves really hard. And in my mind, that should be the only prerequisite is like, is
Well,
this person gonna put in the effort?
right. No, I mean, like, I don't mean to put my sponsors on blast, right? They've been great to me, but like, I've had sponsorships that were basically like, I want to say not taken away from me, but like, they were like not as good sponsorships all of a sudden because I was in residency or I was in med school, right?
Yeah.
Or even now as an attending, right? Like it makes sense. I'm not saying like, oh my god, but basically they made the decision that, oh well, you're a doctor now, so you could afford your geese and your soap and your this and that. You know what I'm saying? Your tape. So like we're gonna give it to somebody else that needs it more than you,
That's
right?
interesting because I've thought for a while that like a lot of like jujitsu brands sort of operate like fairly charitably towards athletes
Right.
because like the ROI in a lot of cases doesn't seem to like totally be there.
Sure.
Um, but I don't get to like know everyone's, account, balance in their spreadsheets and see all that stuff.
Yes.
But so like Saintly Submission, this is my online store now. So we're gonna have rash guards, we're gonna have gis probably like a little bit later on because you have to buy them in advance. But um I was like, I just as soon as I understood how sponsorships like could work, I was like, I'm betting on myself. No one really has anything I want to wear.
Yeah. No, but like, sorry, like this is an example. Like, I'm not trying to like, again, I love all of my sponsors. I'm not naming anyone in specific, in particular, but like, I used to get a stipend, right? Like, I used to get a
Nice.
stipend, and I used to have one of my sponsors used to pay for like all of my majors, like for Pan Ams, for Worlds, Europeans, like all the more expensive tournaments. They
Nice.
would they would pay for my registration, and they would even help me like pay for my travel, and like gone, like
It
gone.
should be based on competence though. Like that it should be based on competence and like results. Like regardless of
Right.
what your day job is, if
Right.
you can get the results, I think that you should be commanding what someone else who gets those results is receiving. But that's
No, I mean, I would argue my results now are more impressive than they were before. I mean, because like I'm sure I was winning as purple belt, but like now I'm placing at black belt, so I'd argue it's about the same or more impressive. But again, I don't even think it's about like, oh, like you said, it should be competent, but I don't think it's that. I think it's again, sorry, not to get on a tangent, but the point is me saying like there are people who are making decisions.
Agree. Yeah. Then I already disagree with them because I've had these conversations in my head. I'm just like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's not, it's not right. Because it's like people want to, I think this is like an important subject because um I've met plenty of other med students, and like I actually competed against another incoming medical student. Shout out to Vinit Reddy. I think he's a purple belt out in Dallas. So anyways, he hooked me from 50-50 at the ADCC Dallas. And but before the match, he like looked me up and he was like, dude, I'm a med student too. Like I'm going to med school out here. And so it was cool. But I've definitely thought about this, and having the conversation about the like these kinds of obstacles that exist like for you as an athlete, and then also like for me, those are there's a real problem in society or just in like people's minds that it seems to like hit on this particular issue, which is something that I get excited because I think that that's actually, there's a lot of potential energy there. Like, so this podcast, I think, is like one of the ways that I hope to basically reverse the dynamic where it's like, hey, you see me having a job or a career in a profession outside of this sport stuff. What if they were complementary? Like, what if they harmonized? What if they made a fusion and you got, yeah, and you got the benefit of it, you know? So that's kind of like where my creative mind sort of like spins a lot of time.
I think I'm right there with you, but I think our experiences allow us to see that as a possibility, right? I think
Yeah.
other people who are not trying to do that, you know, and I'm not even trying to bash other people. I'm just saying like what I've realized through this journey is that people kind of like, okay, like when they hear doctor, right? When they hear doctor, whether you like it or not, they automatically have like a picture in their mind and they have an
Yeah.
expectation and they already assume what this person is going to look like, what they're going to sound like, what they're going to, you know, walk and talk like, what kind of prejudices they may have, you know, what way they might be leaning. So yeah, if you behave differently than that, if you look differently than that, you perform differently than that, you have different priorities than that, if anything, it almost like I've seen it really bother people, right? I've seen it really
Mhm.
bother people when I do not live up to their expectation, whether that's exceeding their expectations or be below their expectations. When it's like, hey, what are you doing? Like, you're a doctor. You're not supposed to behave like that. You're like different than what I imagine, right? Some people, it's very upsetting to them, right? Some people, they're very pleasantly surprised and they look at it as a good thing, right?
Mhm.
They look at it as, oh, wow, that's great that like you're different than what I imagined you to be, right? But some people, man, it's like it ruins their day, right? Like it
That's so
ruins their,
intense.
yeah,
My day is ruined because you are a doctor. You know,
right,
it's, but you know, doctors have their authority figures. But there's a whole book on like the death of expertise. That I read about half of it because, you know, expertise is dying off and I need to finish it. But anyways, it's a good book. I need to finish it. And it basically talks about a lot of the things that sort of COVID seemed to like really piss people off about doctors a lot. Um, but there's so many people have these really strong experiences with their doctors. At some point in their life, it stuck with them forever.
right.
They said, you're never gonna XYZ, or you have this, and so you can't. And I proved them wrong. And it's like,
Oh yeah,
and the doctor played like this role of you can't in their lives.
right,
Now you're a doctor. I'm on my way to be one. And now the fact that, you know, I'm on that path is now a reason that people are telling me that you can't, don't be doing that. You know, it's just funny. It's like we always find interesting ways to get in each other's way.
right,
And
right.
it's fascinating and perplexing. I hope someday like someone can watch this. Maybe you're one of your patients or one of my future patients. And they're like, dang, okay, these are people.
Right, right. And I think, you know, so like I've had a lot of the thoughts you've had. And I to this day, you know, like I'm still trying to, you know, accomplish what I've set out to accomplish. You know, some of it I have accomplished, some of it I'm still working on it. I think what you're saying, like I've wanted so badly, right? Like I've wanted to change people's mind through my performance, right? I've
Yeah.
wanted through my experience, through my story. You know, I've wanted so bad. Like to me, like there was a time where like I was like, it's like world champion or bust, because in my head it just made sense that the only way you change everybody's mind, right? You completely change everybody's mind is you have to do so well, right? You have to exceed so much, because like, okay, for example, like let's say like I don't know, like I win the San Diego Open, right? As a second year resident. Okay. Cool. Like some people would go, wow, that's really inspiring, right? And then but there'd be some jiu-jitsu bro who'd go, oh, well, it's just the San Diego Open, right? Like you could win like Nogi Pan Ams, right? As a whatever, first year attending, second year attending, right? And there'll be a bunch of people who go, oh wow, that's really impressive. But there'd still be somebody who'd go, well, yeah, you know, Nogi Pan Ams. Like, I mean, yes, it's competitive, but you know, I, I'm not even saying I'm right for thinking this, but this is just the way I thought for a long time, right? I was just like, it has to be so over the top and it has to be so impressive that whether you like me or not, you have to give me my credit. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like,
Yeah, I get that. I mean,
yeah,
gonna have to drop his name here, but this is Gordon Ryan's like narrative.
right.
This is like when he first started to. I think when he won the first ADCC, he was. I mean, he had a lot of trash talk from day one, but it was this narrative of like everyone's doubting me, and then I accomplished something, and then no one gives me any credit. So I'm just gonna keep stacking these up until it's like now he's here, and gosh, I hope he gets healthy. Um, maybe that's something when we, as more
Yeah.
information about whatever he's dealing with comes out, we can talk about that. But I think that is a relatable aspect for like almost every athlete. I think that is like one
Yeah.
of the quintessential struggles of the athlete in the Western world, at least.
Right. 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 Yeah. I mean, I'm a fan, you know, I mean, I mean, like we can talk about him, like him as a person. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation. Uh, but as far as, you know, like that's the thing, like he's one of the few guys that he's like put himself out there, you know what I'm saying, to the point where he's put himself on the line and he's never shied away. He's always performed and he's always proved, you know, whatever you want to, he's proved the haters wrong, you know, like, uh, but it's, that's how good he really is, right? Where he can, you know, make a goal, put it out in the world, put it out in the universe, and then like accomplish it, you know? Like, I mean, I'll be honest, I've tried to do it. It's not easy, right? Like, it's not easy. Like, I've come close, but I've also failed a few times. So, um, but yeah, I mean, like, credit to him for just putting himself out there and more, I mean, you could say more importantly or more impressively, the fact that he's delivered again and again and again. I have to respect that. That just shows how good he really is. So,
Yeah, that's the thing that I've learned the most in the last year. Like when it comes to putting yourself out there and respecting it, I like there's a martial arts side of jiu-jitsu, which I think is actually like where a lot of promotions are essentially based. It's like your knowledge and your experience. Then there's the performance side of the sport, and that involves putting yourself out there on a whole nother level. And I've done like a ton of competitions just like in this last year leading up to med school. I probably did like too many, sort of like exposure therapy. Like I'm gonna overexpose myself to the stimulus. I'm just gonna figure it out. And it is it is a completely different skill set. And it's there's someone else I actually want to talk to, kind of like loop into this discussion because it kind of ties into everything. But it's the idea of performance jujitsu and like learning jujitsu as like
right.
two different modalities that you will build practices sort of differently to address each one. It's something that's becoming more popular because the sport's growing.
Mhm.
So someone that I wanted to bring to your attention is Dima Muravani out at the B team.
Okay.
He's running their ADCC CJI
Right.
and the who's number one camp that was like right before that. So I went to Dallas in mid-June, and then followed that up with like a couple days in Austin, Texas, just to like train around down there. And I got to be at the B team headquarters for 3 days, and that just happened to be the first 3 days of Dima's um, presence there as the official coach for their whole training camp, because they definitely have a ton of great minds there and a ton of
Right.
like awesome athletes. but they're all trying to compete, and no one necessarily wants to like run the show because that just
Right.
takes a lot of energy. And so he's German. He has had a lot of success coaching European trials winners for ADCC. And I got to experience 3 days of the way that he ran practice, and it was fascinating. So he does have a really strong demarcation between this is the kind of training that we apply when we are trying to develop new moves, and this is the kind of training that we apply when we are preparing for competition. And I've always seen people mix them in different ways, and I haven't actually had someone with sort of a framework to apply, and that's on his Patreon. And I paid him for a call, and it went really well. And I'm really excited to keep working with him because he's someone that ideally I'm gonna utilize. I told him I was like I'm in med school, so we kind of had to put all the cards on the table because I'm like this is the kind of person that they want to coach winners, obviously, and they're limited on time even if you're paying them. And so I put all the cards on the table. I said, I believe that my destiny is to be a doctor. I think that's what God put me on this earth to do. But I also believe that jiu-jitsu is a part of that, and I'm going to do the best I can. And he said, I like it. I believe you. I want to work with you. I feel the same way about me being the world's greatest coach. And I was like, cool. So he's gonna give me a program, and that's actually like a load off my shoulders because instead of I mean, maybe you can relate to this. Like, how am I gonna get better? What's the best thing I could be doing? What's the highest yield, training method I could be using for progressing and performing and all that? And to have someone that I think it'll be obvious after like August when ADCC and CGI are finished that he's done like a bang up job. I'm already excited because I'm like, wow, he's gonna do all of that critical thinking in terms of like because he's already got it down. So I can just focus on applying myself to the training sessions, implementing the protocols that he's calling for, and then run with it. So that's something I'm pretty excited about. But it just goes back to, I mean, that kind of hits on like everything we were talking about. I don't even remember where that whole thing started.
Well, one thing I'll say is like, I mean, I think that's really cool. Just like listening to you, like I have to admit, and, I'm proud to admit, like you're ahead of where I was at this stage of the game. It took me a while to realize what you've already realized. Like I think obviously you're taking on this like task and this kind of large, like huge undertaking, excuse me. But one thing I think that separates like successful doctors from maybe not unsuccessful, but maybe less successful doctors, it's a very simple thing. It's the ability to delegate tasks, right? And that's something that some doctors learn early in their career. Like, obviously you're in med school. I mean, like this is even before your career has begun, you're starting to realize that, right? And that shows a certain amount of grace and maturity on your part. But I think medicine, for whatever reason, it attracts personalities where they want to do everything, right? They want to do everything, and they like to believe that they can do everything. But like I said, it takes some grace to go, hey, you know what? This is not my area of expertise. Let me hire somebody. Let me take on, let me barter with somebody, whatever it may be, whatever arrangement you make. But hey, all of a sudden now that's one less thing or two less things or three less things you have to think about, right? And somebody's doing it for you. I think the closest thing that I even did was like towards the end of med school, I hired a strength and conditioning coach.
Yeah.
And Mark DeSalvo was my strength and conditioning coach towards the end of med school and the beginning of residency. And that was a good relationship. But anyways, like we because at that point, like, I was just like, I had kettlebells in my apartment in New York City, and I was just doing like whatever I felt like doing for strength and conditioning that day, right? I had kettlebells and some gymnast rings, and it took me a very long time to realize like I was just being stubborn, right? And I was like, look, like I'm not like I know like I've lifted weights, yes, I played football in college, so I have a strength and conditioning background, I guess, but I'm not an expert in the area, and I'm not maximizing this area, and like me pretending like I am, just was foolish. So I got with the strength coach. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And seeing like the benefit of that made me realize like, man, like I should be doing this for like a lot of things, right? I'm at the stage of my jiu-jitsu right now where like, yeah, like, I mean, like I train with Isaac Dorline, James Go, and they're great minds. They really are. But like you said, like they're like as good as they are, like, and they are sort of like, taking on the coaching role, but they're also busy in their own competitive
Oh yeah.
aspirations, their own development. And that's not a knock on them. That's just where they are right now in their career. But yeah, like, would it be sometimes I think, man, like I really do need like a coach, like a full-time coach, somebody that's like fully invested in my development and the development of others. Um, but anyway, so what I'm saying is like understanding that, and not putting like that extra, um, really like, I mean, like time it's really, it comes down to time, right? Like, it's like that's time that is going to take away from studying or I mean, something even simple as, hey, relaxing. But it's all like there's only 24 hours in the day, right? So like how much can you as one person, no matter how talented, no matter how smart, no matter how driven you are, how much can you realistically do? And not just for one day. We're talking about day after day after day after day. So yeah, I think hiring, somebody like Dima, like, I mean, that sounds incredible. I mean, that's like, I think that's a very forward thinking approach on your part.
I'm excited to see how it goes. I mean, I'll definitely let you know. I mean, one thing that we've already talked about that really caught my attention was, I mean, for one, the way he runs the class is just fascinating. So like I can talk about that. But there's a lot of the ecological drills. So I know those are like rising in popularity. But he's got his Patreon's awesome. But basically, one thing that he told me specifically was we just talked about my goals and which they're like fairly modest, but it's really just like taking advantage of like the time that I have to do the best that I can, and I believe that involves like some pretty serious commitments. So he agreed, he understood where I was coming from, and then he was like, I actually so there's two ways that you could sort of do this. One is like you've been wrestling like a lot this last year, and like he actually got like he saw me train like for 3 days when I was there, so he kind of knows like where I'm at. Um, it's like you can just focus on like performance, and that's going to involve like more wrestling. Um, and that just means that basically we're just reaching for like the biggest tournaments every year, like pretty much like as soon as possible. Um, and then and he cited some athletes that sort of like fit that archetype. Like they've more or less been high performers since I don't know, like the first year they started jiu-jitsu. Um, yeah. So because he's coached those people, but then he's also got guys in his roster like Joseph Chen, and that's definitely someone who had spent a fairly short amount of time in what he calls like the learning phase, but then was able to get into performance, sort of with Dima's help and a lot of a lot of a lot of smarts, I'd say. But it worked out. So what he told me was the slower route that I'm hoping you're interested in, that I would be interested in working with you on, is 3 years of skill progression in which you might compete like once or twice a year. But that'd be like we do like a year and then like a little, maybe like 2 months of like performance emphasis and then like hit a competition and then a year of learning progression punctuated by like 2 months of performance prep and then like a competition. Do that for 3 years. And I was like, it's a 20-minute call. So I'm like, I got to make a decision. Oh my gosh.
Sure.
But it clicked with me because I just recognized he just got a really good read on me like already. And I was just like the fact that someone would already think about that and be able to put a timeline out. I was like, wow. And I thought, hey, in a really interesting way, he doesn't know a whole lot about what my med school path is going to look like, but boy, does that fit really nicely with like what I'm doing out here. Um, so yeah, I'm going to talk with him more tomorrow. I'm excited, but the thing that I'm getting back from it. It's not just uh, having some coaching, because he's actually going to give me basically like drills and games to sort of set up. And the skill of the people I'm doing with will, and a couple other things are going to determine like how much I get out of them. I told him I'm going to be training like 3 to 5 times a week, and that the whole thing might blow up in my face, and I might have to like stop training for like 2-3 months at some point.
Mhm.
But so the thing it's giving me is I don't have to spend like my critical thinking power of deciphering, or what should I focus on now, and
Right.
like how should I solve this problem in my training, or like I keep running into this problem. It's like I'm gonna have someone that has like a a bird's eye view. I want you working on this, and he
Right.
already caught me off guard and exposed things just in like that little dialogue that I had with him, and like laying out that progression that made me really think. And so I feel it's a load off my mind just throughout
Yeah.
the day, and
Oh, man.
that part is worth, like, gosh, whatever he's gonna charge me.
Right, right. No, no, I mean, looking back at it, I mean, that was, I would say, the most, um, like, energy consuming part of my journey.
Yeah,
Like during what was that? Because like, as much as I enjoyed it, like I was like the head instructor or one of the head instructors in the area. So like I'd have to get off my shift, 12-hour shift, right? From like 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then I'd like class, I'd be driving over to class to teach at like whatever, 7:30. And I'd have to be thinking about, okay, what am I going to teach today, and how am I going to structure the competition training, and how I'm going to structure my own
yeah,
training.
yeah,
And then like I'd get to training, and like sometimes some of the guys wouldn't be there, or sometimes there'd be somebody new there, or sometimes, like it wasn't what I was expecting. So then on the fly, I'd have to figure out, okay, hey, today let's do this instead, even though I had already planned this. So I don't think it was all bad, but yeah, the organization, looking back at it, just wasn't there. Now here's the thing. I think your approach, yes, like I think it'll work great. I think I applaud you for being so having so much foresight. The only thing I would recommend, as your friend, would be like, there will be days where it's not going to go to plan, right? Or there will be days where, like, I don't know, there'll be like some surprise lecture or something, or there'll be something that will prevent you from getting to training at the time that you were planning on. I think the most, like, that resilience or like that flexibility, cannot be overstated. Like that is very much required through this journey. Like the ability to like not get super upset when things don't go to your plan. Right. And like,
for sure. Yeah,
maybe, yeah.
yeah, I definitely need to work on that because I'm super
Oh my God. I
conscientious.
still need to work on it. I still need to work on it.
Yeah,
I'll tell you a quick story right now. Okay. So like, you'd think I'm like, I've gone through this. So I've developed so much like wisdom, and like, okay. So I got a cold plunge. I finally got like a real cold plunge for the house. Right.
yeah,
I ordered it. I got a cold plunge with the water chiller. Right. So like now it's going to be cold. It's 45 degrees, 24/7. Right. So I can just cold plunge whenever I want. Right. So finally got it. Like finally, financially felt like okay about getting it.
yeah.
So
So you're gonna spend like thousands of dollars just to get cold. Like, are you
yeah, yeah.
sure about this? Like, because I have a bunch of
Okay.
ice packs that I bought on Amazon. It was like a
So
hundred bucks.
you're the one who gave me, that was the initial thing that I was doing. But no, I finally got like the water chiller, and like did like the real thing, right? So I get it, right? And I like do like some, like, not, I'm not gonna say in-depth research, but I did what I thought was enough research, right? Okay. So in my mind, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna start cold plunges like this week, right? Cold plunge arrives and the water chiller arrives. None of the videos I watched said anything about getting a pump. None of the videos I watched said anything about getting tubing, right? Now, I know, don't roll your eyes at me. I know I sound
No,
stupid.
there's so many of these dang things. Like Instagram just hounds me with
Yeah,
cold plunges. I'm like, I don't know why, bro. Is it because I'm like 32 and you just think I'm aching and
yeah.
I need it, or
No, I
like I don't
mean,
know what it is, but yeah,
you fit the demographic, I guess, just the same way I do. But anyway, so I get it. So I get this cold plunge. I'm really excited, right? And like I already, like, I write it down on my schedule. Like I'm gonna cold plunge these days for this long. I get it. Try to set it up. Doesn't work, right? Then I call, then I go, okay, well, I'm not very handy. So then I call our like family handyman, right? Guy shows up. He's not able to figure it out either. He's like, why this doesn't make sense. Is this everything they sent you? Like, right? So he comes for a couple hours, tries to fix it. It doesn't work. Basically what I'm telling you is that I'm having like a nervous breakdown. Like I'm having like a complete meltdown, right? And I'm also getting upset at myself. Like, come on, man. Like, why are you getting so upset about this? Like, you've been through so much worse. Like, you've had to deal with so much more adversity than this. But all of a sudden, this cold plunge not working, and me not being able to cold plunge when I expected the cold
yeah,
plunge.
because you put it in your calendar. Yeah,
Oh my
yeah,
God. It just drove me crazy. Like it like ruined my day. Like my mood was just horrible. My training went to shit. Like my wife was like, you need to relax. Why are you so like uptight about this? Anyways, finally, like 2-3 days later, we realized you have to order the pump. We get the pump. Handyman comes back. He goes, oh yeah, well, this makes sense. This is the part I was looking for. Attaches the pump, and now the cold plunge is working. So now I'm able to cold plunge. But the point of the story is, after all of these years, I'm still not as resilient and flexible as I claim to be, because I let this cold plunge not work for whatever. It didn't work for like 2 or 3 days, right? It was just sitting there for 2 or 3 days and unable to get cold, and I wasn't able to use it properly. And that just like, Scotty, it pissed me off to no end. I cannot tell you why I was so upset.
I think what's happening here, because my fuse for things not working or like not being able to find things or things not happening at the right time, is it just seems to get shorter every year. And I'm like, I think that it happens because like the older you get, the more experience you have with like stuff not working. And it's just like it just bothers you more. And that's probably where I'm at. So it's the reverse enlightenment of becoming more cranky as you get older, and we're just early in that process.
Guess so. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, so like, it's like the one thing I will say is like, that's like the one bad change, I guess, that's happened to me. Because like when I was like, towards the end of med school, or like in the beginning of residency, like that's one thing I never lost my enthusiasm. Like no matter how bad things got, no matter how difficult these, I remember like I had to do like a community medicine rotation in Walterboro, South Carolina, where I had to stay at a what was it called? The Howard Inn, Howard Express. I don't know. It was like a hotel off like the highway, right? So I had to stay in this hotel for like a month, right? I had to stay in a hotel for a month in Walterboro. So, and like, sorry, I'm not trying to talk smack on Walterboro, but Walterboro is like a town, like literally, like you take the exit when you're on a car trip with your family to use the bathroom, and then like that's the only reason you get off. They're like, you don't go to Walterboro to do anything else, right? But I had like a community medicine, or like it was like a pediatric emergency medicine like rotation there. Okay, so I was there for a month. Okay, there's no jiu-jitsu there, obviously, right? I don't even think, like, I couldn't even find like a gym to work out at, right? So like the closest like city was Charleston, which was an hour and a half drive. So I remember I'd get off at like 6:30 p.m. I'd get in the car with my wife. We'd drive to Charleston, get there around like 8:30, 9 o'clock, just so I could lift, or just so I can like train. And I was training maybe like, at best, like at that time I was training like maybe like 2 or 3 days a week, because it was just so inconvenient. Right?
Yeah.
But basically what I'm telling you is like, even through that experience at that point in my life, I never lost my enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Right? Like I was still so like, no, this is okay. Like I'm gonna make this work. I'm gonna figure it out. Like it's only 1 month. Like I'll be fine. I'll be fine. Right? So you take that person, right, and you fast forward what, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, however long it's been, and now like I'm freaking out over my cold plunge not working properly for 2 or 3 days. Like it's almost like it's embarrassing to admit, but like
Well, nobody can fault you for not being humble enough to admit where you're at. Like it's just you just send them a copy of this episode, and you just say like, "Hey, look, that's hilarious." Yeah.
spoiled, I guess, right?
Here's the thing about cold plunges though, is I think that it's definitely because like yeah, I believe that you're a natural athlete, and so um like a cold plunge it's like a I mean it's a career extender. It's like the freedom to like train harder and like recover again. Like there has a pretty heavy dose of hope attached to it.
Sure.
And they're expensive. And so you get like invested emotionally
Yeah.
with these things. And because it's like a whole movement, like the cold plunging. I still like my Epsom salt baths, and they don't seem to mess with like my my adrenaline really, and they're a little bit more tolerable. So I'm still good with them, but like, dude, when the time comes, like if I had the money, like, dude, right now there'd be one outside. I'd be like, yeah, I only use it like once a week, but I freaking have one. I have a sauna too. So
What's your product like? What like? Sorry, I mean not to take away from the episode, but like, what's your protocol? Like, what like? Let's say you have
protocols are the episode, by the way, bro. Like if we talk about, oh, I've been doing this, I think for the people that are watching or listening, it would behoove us to actually just explain at least briefly, this is what I've been doing.
Well, I think so. This is the thing. I think I've even talked to you about this, but the challenge for me when it comes to these protocols, right? So like, okay, like Dr. Andrew Huberman, right? Like him, Peter Attia, like these guys, I mean, they're great. Like I really do. And then what's her name? Well, Susanna Sörberg, like all these. I mean, the people like on, we watch their podcasts and they have these protocols on saunas and cold plunges.
Oh yeah, the mighty cloud of experts, man. These are the people that are telling us how to do it right now. Yeah, again, I know.
I mean,
most of those people you just mentioned.
Yeah, like I mean, I really, I mean, oh sorry, Rhonda Patrick, that was her name. I really like her too. But anyway, so no, these are, I mean, like I even, so I'll look into the studies that they quote, and I do value what they are providing information wise. Now, the only caveat, right? The only part of like the data that they share, right? Like the only not just their data, like any evidence-based double-blinded study that I come across, the only challenge for me I mean, one of the challenges, I mean, there's other challenges. The main challenge for me in order to how to interpret the data for me, that's what's hard, because here's the thing, like you've been doing jiu-jitsu long enough, right? Like you remember how people were doing strength and conditioning training for jiu-jitsu and MMA in the beginning? Like it was sorry, like not to be rude, it was completely idiotic, right? It was like,
yeah, it was just really weird obstacle courses. I did obstacle courses with the guys.
Right. It was like, and then
fun. It was hard. It was like everything was like everything was like a Tough Mudder endurance challenge or something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I saw like good athletes, right? Like I saw good jiu-jitsu athletes, like very promising jiu-jitsu athletes, ruin themselves with the strength and conditioning they were doing, right? And I'm sorry, I don't like to name names because I don't want to sound like disrespectful, but
I think it's happening right now. I mean,
so Nino Schembri, like Nino Schembri was like this like amazing, like he's like basically like not the inventor of the omoplata, but like he
and the rubber guard. So that's one of his
right.
Gripes, sort of.
I was a huge fan, like when I first started jiu-jitsu, like huge fan. Like I would watch him like omoplata, and like the game he was playing was so ahead of the time, and he was such a cool guy, and I got the opportunity to meet him, right? Because he has his academy here in Torrance. So I went there and I started training there at Nino Schembri's academy. I'd go there a couple days a week and train there. And super cool guy, like I mean, they call him Elvis, because he looks like Elvis and he acts like Elvis and all that. Just super cool guy. But I remember at the time, like he was talking to my friend who was a personal trainer, and he very openly told him like, hey, like, I basically destroyed my body, because what he was doing was he was training jiu-jitsu for competition, and then he was like doing CrossFit, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and he was doing like in CrossFit. Like now we're realizing, yeah, it's a whole nother sport, right? But like in the beginning, jiu-jitsu people, MMA people, they just felt like they had to train jiu-jitsu. And if you're doing MMA, you have to train stand-up and wrestling and all that stuff. And then you also have to do CrossFit like 2-3 days a week or more,
Yep. Yeah. This is
and everyone wrecked their body doing that, right? Everyone wrecked their body, right? So okay, so now like fast forward however many years, like we can act like, oh, we know what we're doing now. But no, I still don't think we know what we're doing, right? So like here's the thing, like me right now, like I watch Huberman, right? I watch his protocols on sauna. Okay. Like,
right.
Oh, let's do that. Let's do that. That growth hormone,
4 times in one day, like mildly fasted. Couldn't even figure out what the blood sugar level was for like what's like semi-fasted. It was never published, and it wasn't anywhere on his website. So I'm like, okay, what's semi-fasted? Like how many, what's my blood sugar level? It was weird. I tried it. I felt okay.
I tried it. Okay. And like, look, I believe it worked for certain people, right? But I did it. Okay. And it felt great. Like actually didn't feel great, but either way, like I couldn't train jiu-jitsu physically for like 2 or 3 days after that. Like, and you could say, oh, like it's in your head. No. Like it was too much. Right. So I couldn't train. Yeah. So like, I guess what I'm saying is like, okay, also like cold plunges, right? Like they say, oh, like 11 minutes a week, right? 11 a minute. That's what they're saying now. Like, if you can get 11 minutes a week, like that's the benefit. And I'm willing to try it, but my thing is this, but we're not taking into account what like I'm doing all the other hours, right? As a jiu-jitsu athlete.
Yeah.
Right. So like, how does this like a lot of these protocols, I think they're meant for people who are sitting at a desk, which I'm doing some of that, but
I'm glad that because you're a physician, and so you're reading these studies, like you're a more of an expert user of these protocols than like the vast majority of people out there. And for you to have that question at the end of it, to me, like says it all. And there's a degree of like audience capture that's taking place with like these people like on the leading edge of I'd call it like regenerative health.
Right.
Is like where a lot of this information is coming from. And we'll have to do like a whole episode or like a couple episodes just
I love that.
on like discussing sort of the current state of regenerative medicine as it relates to jiu-jitsu.
Sure. I
Because
mean,
yeah.
I'll say a quick example. Like, I mean, I'd love to do a whole nother episode on it, but like, yeah, because I competed in the Orange County Open today. Like I haven't competed in Nogi for like, it's gotta be at least 3 years, but did it. I cold
You did
plunged
good
this morning.
too.
Thank you. But I cold plunged this morning.
Yeah.
Okay. I cold plunged this morning because like the last 3 days I've done it and I felt actually pretty good when I woke up. But I'll be honest, something felt weird today. Like in my first match, like my cardio, like everything, like just felt kind of off. Now I don't know what that was. I'm not saying it was the cold plunge, but it makes me start to think like, hey, like, okay, like, yes, I think cold plunging can be good for me, but like I don't, it's so new to me. It's like, what days am I supposed to do it? What protocols am I supposed to follow? Like, at the very least, I know, hey, I should be doing it in the mornings. Or at least like I think a big thing is like don't do it right after weightlifting because it actually like diminishes some of the hypertrophy.
Your blunts your inflammation response that's going to
Right.
drive your adaptation. So I guess that right before the workout maybe makes the most sense.
Right. But then again, like, from a performance standpoint, right? Like, how am I going to implement cold plunging into my weekly protocols, right? Because I already have my gi jiu-jitsu, my no-gi jiu-jitsu, my strength and conditioning protocols already in place. And how does cold plunging fit into that? How does sauna fit into that? There's been a few evenings I've saunaed around, 5 or 6 p.m. Maybe sat in the sauna a little bit too long, wake up and go train, and I don't feel my best.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, we're not like, I don't think the protocols that Huberman and these people are putting out, as much as I respect them and I think they're great and I appreciate their work, I don't think they seamlessly apply to us.
Yeah, I think like I know places like the UFC Performance Institute would have a lot more like precise or a lot more accurate information in regards to like how to protocol for athletes, like specifically combat athletes. And this is something that, who knows, maybe our little podcast will get us through those doors someday. But I think that you have to get pretty specific and things start to fall apart. Like, so one, like the adrenaline that you feel in a competition is it's tremendous. Like even if you've been competing a lot, I think most competitors would agree. Like if you don't feel an adrenaline dump or you don't feel like at least like some like high intensity threshold in your heart rate, like during a comp, it's like a bad thing. You want to be on, you want to be like turned up and like hyped and ready to go. I think that the cold plunge actually does trigger that response. I think it does. I think your adrenal glands and your adrenal response is actually involved in cold plunging. It's one of the reasons that it works, and people get like some mental benefits from it. But I could see why doing it on the same day, it's almost like you actually did like a bracket in that cold plunge sort of before you did your bracket. Maybe not like on every level physiologically, but at least on some. And so maybe you just had like a little bit less electricity for when you needed it.
Yeah, I just didn't feel like that, the ability to like go like I normally would, like I just felt like, but it's okay. I mean, whatever. You live and you learn, and luckily it wasn't like a major tournament either. But I can see what you're explaining or how that might have taken place a little bit. But yeah,
Well,
I mean,
it's yeah, we don't know. It's gonna be hard.
that's actually like, if you ask me, like, that's the thing I'm enjoying the most now. I mean, I've enjoyed it for years, but I'm enjoying it even more now, especially because of the years of trial and error and like what they've led to now. And none of it was a waste, even though, yes, there were some sure bad performances and things like that. But again, like just the knowledge that you gain. And like, I don't want to like, get into the whole conversation of like, oh, like younger, older and stuff like that. But like, that's as a, I guess, older athlete now, that's one of the huge benefits that I believe that I have and older athletes have that doesn't get much attention or people don't put much weight into. Like, you've lived in your body for whatever, 35, 36 years, right? Like, versus like that 22-year-old or 23-year-old you're fighting has only lived in their body for that long, right? Like, I think that is a huge advantage that like no one ever gives like older athlete. Like like what I know about my body and what I know about or how to prime my body and how to make it fire and perform the way I would like it to versus the way I approached it when I was 23, 24, completely different.
Yeah, that's true. I'm just figuring out how to get everything to fire when I want it to. I'd say like in terms of like prepping for competition and performing well. That's like my new frontier. So it is huge. And so this is a cool fact. It's something I've been wanting to bring up. And when I have it, maybe because I probably have to make a blog post out of it, but it's really central to sort of the way that I've come to think about like progression and aging within a sports context for combat sports is I remember seeing a chart and I believe that it's still accurate and it just showed the average age of the UFC champion according to weight class. And the trend was um, starting with like flyweights, which was like the average age of the champion at the time that this data was collected was like 24, 25. And then it went all the way up to heavyweight. And then the average age of the UFC champion was like basically like 32, 33.
Right.
And so like just along that, the other really significant piece of data for that little study was that the knockout rate as you get older, um, like your susceptibility to getting knocked out the longer you're in MMA goes up. Your brain gets smaller. You also been taking more damage. The really cool thing was for grappling, the submission percentage and the submission defense went up with experience, like across all weight classes. That was like very consistent. And so your ability to learn how to grapple and submit people um, is definitely something that you get to hang on to. And I think that that plays into what you were describing, because this is actually a sport that if you know how to play your cards right and you're not too stupid when you're younger, you can pull off um, something that I would say is I always refer to it as like pushing the finish line further out. And it's like it's something I'm super passionate about with like the overlap of medicine and jiu-jitsu is one of my biggest goals is how far can I push that finish line, like your retirement age as an athlete, how far can I push that thing out?
Right. Well, I think,
Yeah.
I mean, sorry, like not to get on the conversation point of retirement, but like I've actually just pondering this or daydreaming about this the other day. Like, how many athletes or how many fighters or whatever, however you want to categorize them, how many people retire or probably give up earlier out of just sheer frustration, right? And then when you're talking about
Oh,
frustration, like, where does frustration even come from, right? Frustration comes from like a problem that you do not believe you have the solution to, or you do not believe you can figure out the solution for, right? So, not knocking professional fighters, but professional fighters who don't have any understanding of anatomy or physiology. I mean, I'm sure they have some understanding of anatomy and physiology, but they don't have a detailed anatomy of understanding of anatomy and physiology of nutrition, of recovery, right? They probably get to, a day, a week, a month of feeling less than they felt before, right? And they probably just interpret that as, oh, well, it's my time. It's over. Right.
it'll probably be a little bit different for everybody. Like I
Yeah.
think there's, but I mean, I only pay attention to it's sad because there's so many great athletes that um, we don't know them because we didn't pay close enough. We didn't look at the whole sport or whatever it was for long enough to like know who they were. I know a few of these names in jiu-jitsu, like people that were like really stand out, but they're kind of like dark horses or like not really widely known because jiu-jitsu is already a really small sport. But like um, people who really understand like and study the body. In addition, there's plenty of people that study the mind, but people that study the body, at least in combat sports, are pretty rare to do it to a really high level. The one name that I want to put out right now because I think that he is the greatest of all time in this range of like lasting the longest. It's Bernard Hopkins.
Yeah, sure.
So he did have like his last fight was at 51. He did not win. Um, Prior to that, his 40s were like that was like that whole decade was incredibly decorated in terms of
Right.
like wins, and he was strategic. He had excellent defense, and the interviews that we have of him are talking about like his lifestyle and stuff.
Right.
At least what he talks about is I'm super disciplined. Like I eat raw beets every day. Like they tried to do a biopsy of his heart and they couldn't even find any fat to grab to like
Oh,
study and like analyze because he was just his heart was like 100% lean, which is
right.
not normal, I guess. So
Unheard of,
it was too fibrous. His muscles, but heart tissue in his the muscle tissue in his heart was too fibrous for them to like successfully do a biopsy.
right.
Um, and so he lasts, and that's in a sport where you're getting hit in the head, which is also your brain's shrinking. You know, definitely past 40. You've also been getting hit the whole time. So that's like a magical sort of thing. He also doesn't look to be. I mean, performance enhancing drugs take all forms, shapes, sizes, but um, who knows? I mean, it'd be you couldn't put him in the same category as like Alistair Overeem, for example.
No, for sure,
Um,
for sure. But I mean,
you know,
that's a whole,
so
that's I mean, I'm sure then that's a conversation we're gonna have on this podcast.
oh, we're gonna have some big boys on here for sure.
Yeah. No, but I mean, sorry, like that's something that I feel like even somebody who is like the most, you know, not like pro performance enhancing, like they believe it's the greatest thing ever. I still don't believe they can argue that like it does have an effect, a negative effect on longevity, um, especially when it's done in high doses, right? I mean, like if you're that was part of the reason why I've chosen to stay natural. It's not even I'm not even gonna get on some high horse and talk about ethics and say, oh, I'm like such a noble, humble person, because I don't even think it's about that. I think there's plenty of like really good ethical people that sure maybe they do take performance enhancing drugs as long as they're competing in a federation that allows it. But anyways, just for me, like that's the only thing. That's the reason why I haven't used them yet. Is just because I don't want to negatively affect my longevity, because somewhere down the road, I think it's a realization you come to as well. Is like when you go, oh well, hey, I am going to medical school, I am going to residency. Like this is going to delay my progression in jiu-jitsu, whether I want to accept it or not. So yes, I am going to get my opportunities in my late 30s, early 40s, whatever age bracket you get your shot to like really try to do something notable in the sport. But you need to make sure that you're feeling good enough in that age range where you can actually do something, right? And like it's like, I mean, sorry, it's like, any drug, right? Any substance, right? Like you don't know how you're going to react to it, right? Like I mean, like I prescribe medications for a living, right? I mean, that's what I do. And every time I prescribe a medicine, right? And these are controlled, like these are for the most part fairly safe medications, right? Like okay, let's say something like Lexapro, right? For depression and anxiety, right? So I put somebody on 10 milligrams of Lexapro because they have depression that did not respond to CBT, like cognitive behavioral therapy. They don't have any suicidal, homicidal ideation, but they're just fed up. They want to start feeling better. Okay, so we've agreed, hey, you're going to go on Lexapro. But what's the protocol? That they go on it for 4 to 6 weeks and they need to follow up with me, right? And I also have to go through the side effects with them and all that. So basically, the point of me bringing that up is even a medication, right, as benign as Lexapro, or maybe not benign, I don't know how you want to perceive it, but I'm just saying like that's our protocol because we don't know how everyone is going to respond to a medication, right? we have to follow up with them, right? So like now here's the thing, like I don't know if this is the right analogy, but I'm saying like, okay, like Tren, Anawar, like whatever you're taking, something like testosterone cypionate, right? Something just pretty basic TRT, right? Now, most of the time people do fine with it, but I have had patients that have started TRT that had negative effects,
Mm.
right? Had effects that that they didn't see coming. I didn't even see coming, right? And it's usually fine. Is usually we can take them off of it, and they're usually fine. But as an athlete, I think especially, right, you have to be very careful with what you're putting in your body, in regards to longevity.
Well, you basically answered the question that I was going to ask, because I think this is important for people to know about you, and it's because of jujitsu and medicine. It's like, dude, we're talking about steroids, we're talking about TRT for sure. And so you did a good job just explaining a little bit about your thought process. So would you say that even as a physician, you are hesitant to hop on testosterone replacement therapy because you understand the implications, known and unknown, that
Yes.
could
Yeah.
happen?
I think, yeah, generally put, I think that's an accurate assessment. I think when you have knowledge, I'm not saying, oh my God, like I have this esoteric knowledge or anything like that, but like when you have a little bit more knowledge than the layperson, um, you you tend to, I guess, play out in your mind like what is the worst case scenario, right? Now, of
Yeah.
course, there's a best case scenario, right? And that's probably what's going to happen. And I'll be honest, like I mean, in I'm happy to say, like in my line of work, like in our line of work, usually when we make an educated decision, right, and we start treatment, usually it works, right, and usually it has desirable effects, right. I'm
Hmm.
happy to say that. Otherwise, I wouldn't do this job. I'll be honest. If we were just putting people on medications and more than half the time things were going wrong, like it would not be a satisfying or a fulfilling job, right? But when you put people on a treatment plan and they get better, it's very satisfying to see, and people are very appreciative, and they all of a sudden they trust you and they respect you, and they come back to you, and that's what makes the job satisfying, right? However, whatever percentage you want to put on it, there are undesirable or unseen effects, right? There's things that happen that you wish didn't happen, or or you kind of have to plan for, right? And that's something that you and the patient, of course, discuss, and then you make a plan where if that is to happen, you already have a backup plan in place. But yeah, like that being said, when it does happen, the patient isn't happy, you're not happy, right? It's just it's kind of like something that you wish didn't happen, right? And of course, you have to make up for it, and you have to regain their trust and all that. Okay, but that's your patient, right? And of course, my patients are important to me. However, like me as an individual, right? Now I'm going to be very careful, right? Because again, I know what could happen, right? I know what could happen. And then also like because I take jiu-jitsu seriously, and because I take my whatever you want to call it, my fitness, my well-being, because I know how much it affects my performance in jiu-jitsu, I'm going to be that much more careful, right? So like okay, like I'll give like an example. Um I don't think it's completely related to jiu-jitsu, but like, I mean, I think what since the pandemic, a lot of us have been more open about like mental health, right? And like mental health struggles that we may have gone through. I think people have gone through their fair share of mental health struggles, right? And I'm not immune to that, right? So I've throughout residency, and then even like the beginning of my attending years, I think just the stress and the struggle of everything finally caught up to me, right? And started to have, you know, some levels of diagnosable anxiety, some levels of diagnosable depression, right? I was never, I'm ashamed to admit it. I never went to, to a specialist or anything like that. But I myself, with my training and my understanding, was able to go, okay, hey, those are some signs of clinical depression. Those are some signs of anxiety, right? And I'm not like, I prescribe medications, or I'll refer somebody to psychiatry, and there's no shame in getting help or being on medication. But the decision I made for myself, right? Because I consider myself fortunate to have an understanding of the disease process, right? The pathology itself, right? But also the at the neurotransmitter level, right? I understand like it's a deficiency in serotonin, right? Or it's a whatever, it's a deficiency in dopamine production. It's a whatever we're talking about, whatever pathology we're talking about, I can tell you, fortunately, because of my training and my experience, I can tell you specifically what is going wrong in the brain or what's going wrong in the body, right? Yeah. And with that knowledge, I like to believe that I can manipulate whether it be my neurotransmitters, whether it be my, something simple as like, my sleep quality, right? My nutrition, cold plunging, like whatever it may be, right? Because okay, the cold plunging, like, right. I'm not just doing it because I think it's cool or I think it's fashionable or trendy, right? I read the science on it and I see what it does at a neurotransmitter level, right? And significantly spikes your dopamine levels, right? And for that reason, I was like, oh, hey, this could be good for me, right? This could be good for me in regards to remedying whatever mental health issues I am currently struggling with, right? And that's why I feel like that is for me, because I understand, I'm like, maybe that's I believe I'm patient enough, right? Or I'm not getting frustrated as quickly because I have an understanding of like, oh, this is a problem that I can problem solve, right? And yeah, but I'm open to it. If the cold plunging doesn't work, if the improved sleep doesn't work, if the improved diet doesn't work, would I hop on an SSRI? Sure, I would, but I'm going to exhaust the other options first, right? Because
that makes sense to me, and there's a popular psychological study that's been making the rounds for at least a couple months now, but it's like they just did they compared and contrasted the effects of prescriptions for I want to say it's depression, and now I'm totally out of pocket because I can't even cite it all correctly, but essentially exercise was proven to be just as effective at a minimum as like a lot of prescriptions that are being used for depression. And
yeah, but I'm gonna say this, right? And I'm not gonna cut you off, but I'm gonna play devil's advocate to that, okay? Because like I have this conversation so many times. I know that's not where you're going, but I have this conversation so many times with people at the gym, especially.
No, go ahead. Yeah,
right. Like I've had this conversation so many times of like they're going like, oh well, I wouldn't take an SSRI. I just work out and eat healthy and sleep on time and it helps me, right? And that's great. But here's the thing. This is what I'll say from my experience. Okay. For me to get over my call it depression or depressed symptoms, right? Or my anxiety or my symptoms, my anxious symptoms, right? Whatever, however you want to categorize it, right? It took me a long time. And it took me a lot of consistent behaviors day after day after day after day. Okay. And I'm also really fortunate because I have like a really supportive wife, supportive family. I have access to healthy food. I have access to gyms. I also have time, as much as, yes, I'm busy with work and stuff. I have time to train every day.
yeah, you work out a ton.
Yeah, I work out a ton. I work out.
Yeah, this is a fact. Yeah, you'd be like, you'd be if every workout you have is a pill, I mean, you'd be taking a bottle a week. I mean, it's definitely a lot. So
what I'm saying is like even through all that, even through all those consistent behaviors, it took me like months, right? Months. And there were times throughout that whatever treatment program that I made for myself where even I was like, I don't know if this is working. Right? Because there would be days where I'm like, even though I did everything right, I didn't feel right. Like I felt off. Right? Okay. So now me, the trained professional, is having doubts and wondering if this is gonna work.
okay.
So now me telling you all of that, right? How fortunate I am, how much I have access to. You came to my house, right? You saw how my house is set up, right? It's a gym. The whole house is like I have the garage is a gym, the backyard.
It's sweet. It's a sweet setup for anyone that's listening. It's pretty awesome.
Right. And I'm fortunate because I didn't have this setup before. I just made this setup recently. But anyways, I have access to it. But anyways, what I'm saying is even after all of that, I almost wasn't able to find success through my protocol. Okay.
Yeah.
So now experiencing that, how am I supposed to expect that of my 74-year-old patient with CHF and chronic kidney disease? How am I expect them to also follow the same protocol?
Oh, goodness gracious. I hope that I hope a lot more goes into the decision than that one random study that's been making the rounds on Instagram. gets involved in that. Yeah, for sure.
So
But
many,
this, yeah, jiu-jitsu people would bring this up. Like that would be, I don't need a
people,
doctor.
like in America, I'm sorry, like I love America. I'm a very proud American, but American people, from what I'm gathering on off of social media and what's being circulated, primary care medicine to me appears like it's under attack, right? Like medicine in general feels like it's under attack. Right?
Yeah, the depth of expertise. I'm gonna have to finish that book. Maybe you'll like it.
People are like what Dana White has come out, right, and said that I would never go to a primary care doctor ever again in my life. Gary Brecka saved my life, right? Like that's a big thing now on social media. Like, don't go to your doctor, just get this infrared light, sit under it, lay on this PMF mat, right? Cold plunge, and
For sure.
you'll be cured, right?
It's doctors are just I mean, it's like if you can prove one wrong, it's like you got a product, you got a statement. You can kind of like build the clout of whatever case you're making based on how many doctors' lives you just ruined with the truth that you're dropping on everybody, because they don't want you to know this. It's like they don't actually care. Yeah, that's the big disconnect.
I like this is embarrassing to admit, but there's this guy that I've known for a while. He's a nice guy, but he's like like one of your jiu-jitsu guys, are kind of like he's zany, he's like really into like like herbs and crystals and
Oh yeah, like half the team every gym.
Yeah. So he's I'm not like he's a nice guy and he's smart in some areas, right? I'm not knocking him completely, but this guy, like, he started talking to me about how he has high blood pressure, right? He has high blood pressure, and like the doctor wouldn't do anything but offer him like amlodipine or metoprolol or something like that, right? He just kept giving him medication. And I asked him, what was your blood pressure? Right? And he was like, oh, it was like 190 over 120. And I was just like, yeah, you should probably take the blood pressure medication. Like,
yeah, it's gonna take months to reverse
unless
that.
you want a stroke, yeah, like you can take all the beetroot powder and sit in the sauna as long as you want. But I doubt it's gonna bring your blood pressure down like in time, right?
Yeah.
And this guy was just like, yeah, I don't know, he just kept pushing medication, and I was like, listen, man, like, I'm like, here's the thing, like,
these doctors, dude, just pushing medication, man. Like, come on, 190. I'm good. I'm just gonna go for a jog.
Yeah, but like that's like I had another guy. I overheard a conversation. There's a kid that I used to train with. He's a type 1 diabetic, right? Type 1 diabetic. He's like a teenager, and like this grown man was telling him like, oh, well, you just like drink apple cider vinegar, and like, oh, that'll help. So
that's
this
yeah. Well, I'm excited to be frustrated about this too someday. Right now, it's just funny to me because I'm like, nah, I'm just a student. I don't have to deal with that. But primary care, well, dude, God bless you for going into primary care.
Yeah. My advice is pick a specialty. Pick a specialty where you're become like an interventional radiologist or something like that, where you don't have to interact with people too much.
And then you're just safe. You can just hide out in the dark. Yeah,
those guys are smart. Those guys are really smart.
Well, it's nice to have them when they're around. It feels like finding one that's working when you need them. That's like, they'll be in tomorrow. They don't get in until noon or something like that. Takes a while. Did I lose you? We got connectivity. Yeah. I did specialties. I mean, I know what I'm interested in. I'll be honest, radiology is not up there. The thing that came up a lot when I was like taking MCAT courses, they're like, yeah, you guys are going to hear about the road to success, and it's R is for radiology, O is for like orthopedics, A is for anesthesia, and D is for dermatology. And that's the road to success. And I was like, wow, you kind of like mapped it all out for me. So just pick one of those and I'll be happy. That's funny. Radiology. I just, I got to meet one first. We just got to find one that does jiu-jitsu, and then we can just talk to them.
Yeah.
That'd be fun. ask them what's all the weird stuff. I hear a lot of like when people talk about knees, that's like one of my pet peeves. Because even I'm not a doctor yet, but like uh when people are like, oh yeah, my meniscus, it's popping, it's doing this, or like I'm just gonna get it cut out. Especially from like high level guys, because they're like, oh, like getting a meniscus repair, like they never take anyways, and it's like I'm like, "No, they would if you understood that the estimated time to make that thing recover is going to be longer because what you do with your knees is not something any surgeon is really going to be familiar with.
Right.
And then they're like, well, I want to do less. It's like, no, it's going to be like double. Like, because I actually went through, I had a whole like 2 year sequence of recovering from an ACL reconstruction and then a meniscus repair like sequence. It was an implant. But
Yeah, I mean, it's like, it's super cliche, I guess, and people would even roll their eyes at me when I say this, but it's like when you're young, like, and the decisions you're making, and I hate that I'm saying this because I sound like an old guy when I'm saying this, but like just like when you're just kind of living for the moment, you're like, oh, like, well, I need to get better now. Like I need to win now. I need to, like you're making all these short-sighted decisions. Like 35 comes around pretty quick, man.
the athletes are some of the most impatient people ever.
Yeah.
That's why I was really excited to talk to Dima because he was like, I have like a 3 year plan for you.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, I bet big on long-term stuff, like especially myself. Like I spent 6 years after I graduated from undergrad to get into med school. And I was really particular about like, I tried to get into UCSD. They had a post-bac program, and the post-bac program was 1 year long. And I was trying to do it because that would give me a really good shot at getting into med school. I blew 3 years like after graduating from undergrad, just trying to get into that 1 year program to get into
Yes.
UCSD so that I could stay in San Diego. It
Yes.
ended up working out, but like I bet big on the long term and then ended up all the way out here in Lynchburg. But like thank God I've
Bro,
got people to train.
I guarantee what we'll have this conversation. I'll talk to you 5 years from now, and it's gonna make sense. You're gonna know why you went that route and how, and you're even gonna tell me that during that time that you spent, that you learned a lot, and as a result means you're a better doctor. I'm telling you, you will, even if you don't fully understand or appreciate it now. Because like, yeah, I look back at my journey and go, oh, that was, there was a time like that was stupid, that was a waste of time, all that, but all of a sudden, boom, I see a patient or I'm, in a situation where I go, oh yeah, well, because of that time, I learned this, and now it helps me in my career.
For sure, for sure. Well, there was one thing that you asked about a little bit earlier was like Epsom salt baths. You're like, oh, what are you doing with that? It was just like, dude, you can buy it like I have it right here. So free
Yeah,
shout out to Dr. Tealers.
yeah.
They have a ton of different scents and like you can get ginger and like lavender or whatever. It all works.
So
I
how
probably
I
use
mean, I'm
like
familiar with them, but how do you program them in your week?
um I mean I basically I don't think I would do more than 3 in a week. Because I do them
Are you
kind
doing
of
it before
heavy.
bed?
Yeah, because if you raise, that's one thing that Huberman taught me that wasn't part of the protocol necessarily, but it's true, is like if you raise your temperature before bed
Right.
in a hot bath or a hot shower, your body's natural process is to cool you off.
Cool down.
And I kind of ran into some problems because I have this like 8 sleep mattress cover thing that he also sold me on. Thanks a lot, Andrew Huberman. It works great, but I
Yeah.
didn't really get the full benefit of it until I started, and so I started my temperature a little bit higher than where I wanted to be, and then had the next and then had it drop off. If I got
Yeah.
in and it was just freezing cold the moment I got in, I would have this like spike in wakefulness about like an hour after I fell asleep. And once I've switched it to be a little bit warm and then get cold, that actually matched the way, because it was like by starting warm, I would get my body's metabolism to go into like a cooling process. And taking a hot shower or a hot bath is really similar to like setting the bed temperature to being like a little bit warmer. Your body's going to respond by cooling off. So you can do them in the morning. I've because of just time, I've done them right before practice. That feels great too. Um, they're not really as excruciating as ice baths. And when I'm really in the heat of it, yeah, like I'll do like probably like 3 a week. They're also just like they're really good just for um, just getting the stress of the week out. It really, I mean, taking care of yourself. So I dig them. Ice baths are cool, but like I can only handle them, like so much of them. And
Yeah,
it's funny.
I'm learning that the hard way, I guess.
It's inexpensive. Like I think people like post them a lot on Instagram. It's like I'm gonna get something out of this thing. I freaking hate this stuff.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get some traction out of like freezing my butt off in here. Funny story. I actually know a Navy SEAL who is just absolutely hates cold plunges, and he's just adamant that they're a waste of time. And I think some of that has to do with the fact that there's actually like a few SEALs I think that have talked about this publicly. Like I don't like cold water that much. Don't understand why people are so crazy about it. They're like ever since they passed like their buds experience, they're just like, I hate this stuff. Why do people want to do that? Find something better to do. But yeah,
I mean, I might change my answer, but the only thing I can at this point tell you that I like about it, because I'll be honest, I don't like it. I'm doing it, but I don't like
yeah,
so the thing I'm enjoying is so I was one of those guys, like even in residency, all that, like even the days we have to, I had to be at the hospital at like 5:30 a.m. or whatever. I just used to be like, haha, I'm not a morning person, LOL, haha. You know what I'm saying? That was just you. Like, like you're like one of those people like, oh, like not until I have my coffee, like don't talk to me until I have my coffee, right? Like, you know what I'm talking about, right? Like there's like those mugs and the t-shirts and like people like make that their personality. Like I'm not a morning person, right? And I kind of identified with that, like just being a person that was just not good in the morning, right? To the point where like I had a very hard time competing well as a black belt, because all of a sudden when I got my black belts used to compete at like 2 or 3 o'clock back in the day, but now they only they compete at like 9 a.m.
Oh, and the
right?
gi, yeah. No gi, it's kind of nice. Like
Yeah.
it's the same as like brown belt for IBJJF. But I know
Right.
what you're saying.
But
Yeah,
so
that time.
that took forever for me, for like getting like to be able to compete on a Saturday at like 9:30 or 10 a.m. was just like I wasn't fully awake. Right. So like, and then like to go and like fight another good black belt and like be like, focused and learn enough to like, respond properly to every reaction. It just wasn't happening for me. So like, basically what I'm getting at is like, for years I struggled being a morning person, and waking up and just submerging myself in the cold. All of a sudden now I'm like awake.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
yeah.
I can
That
definitely see that.
just for that reason alone, I think I'll probably stick to it for at least who knows how long, but I'm gonna do it just because like I feel like I'm getting a lot of more time in the day that I'm focused, because I do it in the morning and I'm instantly awake, instead of wasting like the first 2-3 hours of my day.
Yeah, I think I might just like install like a shock collar, and then I can just wake up and I can just sound myself.
Way to work.
They make
They probably have the same effect. Yeah.
There's products that I swear there's like wristbands you can buy. There's like they actually electrify you. It's shown up in my Instagram. I've been targeted by like some of the most insane torture devices for waking up in the morning. Yeah, it's absurd, but that makes sense. Cold showers are kind of like my compromise for that right now. But right now I don't need it, because the thing that's been helping me is just getting sun in my eyes in that first like 30 to 60 minutes waking up. Yeah, like especially you do it for like a week, you're like switching time zones, and I'm like, oh, okay, I can do it. That helps me a lot.
No, for sure.
Also
I'll
been
do the cold
coffee
plunge.
free.
I like the sun in the eyes. If it's not sunny, I know they say like even if it's not sunny, it still works. But I have my red light in the garage that I'll just turn that on.
Dude, I got my red light too. I was like, I literally bought it back for my trainer. I was like, bro, I'm moving. Like, if you don't want to sell it back to me, it's okay. But I'll even buy it from you for like more than I sold it to you for. Because my last apartment was just so small that I didn't have room for all the crazy stuff that I have right now.
I feel an effect. I just again, even if it's just alertness or wakefulness, I'll take it.
Dude, it's energy on a mitochondrial level. Like you're exciting electrons in your electron transport chain with that stuff. Do I feel it? I don't really care if I feel it. I want my mitochondria to be happy. Those are some of my best friends, like my mitochondrial DNA.
I remember like this is like a second year in med school, right? So you'd expect like people to be a little bit more sophisticated, but like our professor was like, okay, like, so, and then what does the mitochondria do? And like, without flinching, the whole class goes, the powerhouse of the cell.
Dude, it's funny. They don't teach kids how to file taxes in high school, but like even non-science majors and people that didn't go to college know that that's what mitochondria is. It's so funny. Yeah, yeah. And the MCAT, dude, like the damn Krebs cycle. Like I heard it's coming back. I'm not excited, but I did okay on that component of the MCAT. But yeah, it's gonna be fun. So my first, I can give you just like a quick spiel, and then like for sort of what's coming up for me, um, and then we can probably call it because it's like 10:34 all the way over here.
Oh shit,
Um, it's so I've got orientation starts next week on July 16th. So it'll be Tuesday through Friday. It's just like all orientation. We're gonna meet each other. We're gonna put us through like a fun ropes course or something, I think. Talk about the clubs and how we're all gonna die or something in the school and be remade or something like that. And then we do the white coat ceremony, the 20th, and then which is like a Saturday. And then school, first day of class starts like 8 a.m. It's 9 weeks straight of anatomy starting on the 22nd. So they've got us there like 8 to 5 pretty much. Um, and I'm not sure how much studying I'm going to need to do in the evenings on top of that. Um, I'm hoping I can keep it like 3 hours or less, but we'll see. So that's my first challenge, like right out the gate, is how am I going to get those those 4 sessions in a week? But I've got I've got 10 1x2 Fuji mats
Okay.
downstairs, and I've got room for 5 more, and
Okay.
I'm really excited. So Coolmit, shout out to Coolmit because they're definitely taking care of me out here. That's the super cool like basic
Yeah.
cooling pad that I showed you.
Right.
They're sending me a second unit because I asked them. I said, "Look, I'm trying to gather the experts out here for like a VIP training session, and can you send me another unit?" So they said yes, and so the extra mat space and the cool mitts, I'm hoping that you know the training sessions I do get will be like stellar. But I heard that after these first 9 weeks, um, they want us all to be like in person for that first 9 weeks because they want us
Okay.
all to like meet each other and work in the anatomy lab and like
Right. Right.
build connections and stuff. But then after that, then they're going to transition out into you
Virtual.
can yeah you do more virtual. You can be on campus like a few days a week. But it's going to free up some more. So it's going to might be like a hold your breath moment and train hard on the weekend, just lift weights in the morning or something. But that's what I'm looking at. So the solid 2 months.
No, that's exciting. That's exciting. And I mean, don't let anyone tell you otherwise because like, they're gonna go, oh, well, like get your priorities straight or whatever. But like, I definitely think that the second like that's how my mind would work, and I'm glad and I'm happy to admit it. The second I would get my schedule, I would be like, okay, where does the training structure and do it, right? And it will,
So yeah,
and it can and it will. I mean, yes, you might have to get weird, you might have to train at weird hours here and there for a couple of weeks, but reps are reps. So
for sure. Reps are reps. Well, dude, that's awesome. I think this is probably a good place to land it. We're at like a hour 41 minutes. So it's always a blast, dude. It's always a blast
no,
popping it up with you.
I feel the same way, man. It's just it's fun. It's cool. Like I feel like I'm talking to my younger but yet wiser self. So I always
Well, it's you started med school when you were like what 26, 27?
26. Yeah, 26, 20. Yeah, I was about to turn 27. Or no, I just turned 27. Yes. It was my 27th birthday, and then I started like a week or two later.
That was when I decided to start pursuing medicine.
Okay.
And now I'm starting now and I'm 32. So it's like it's a little bit it's like I mean I appreciate it, but it's like I think it's also well, I am definitely 8 to 10 years older than a lot of my classmates. So I'm gonna meet him. I have a mentor who's like 23 and he's already got a kid and he's married.
You're gonna
Super
do
nice guy.
you're gonna do much better though, I think. All the best, the highest scoring students in my med school class were like in their early 30s, early mid 30s.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess I do know why. Like they just they had their stuff figured out. They were more focused, and a lot of them also had like tremendous life experience already. That just
Mm,
made, yeah. So they had like knowledge. Some of them worked as EMTs, or some of them scribed, or whatever it may be. So they all
okay.
had a good amount of experience. So
Yoshi, I did my fair share of that, and yeah, it's just gonna be anatomy for those first 9 weeks. So my goal is just to crush that first test whenever it comes, might be like 2 weeks in, and then to be able to have like a report card of like, yeah, I actually still trained. I got in like my 4 jiu-jitsu sessions that week, and I lifted like 4 times that week too, and here I am. Bam. So we'll see how it goes, but I'm hoping to be able to share that with everybody.
Well, yeah, no,
So,
keep us posted. We're all excited. We know you'll do it. Make us proud.
dude, thank you, appreciate it. Yeah, doing it for the people out there that don't know that we're all in this together yet, but they will. Because they're out there. They're out there. I've already, like I told you, there's that kid that heel hooked me out in Dallas.
Yeah.
And there's gonna be, I'm sure there's gonna be more. I really just hope that
No, I
we're
think
able
this
to
is great because
reach all those people.
when I did it, when I went through it, I wish I knew others. I'm sure maybe there was somebody else doing it. I'm not sure, but I felt very alone. You know what I'm saying? And maybe that's where, in some weird way, I gained some of my strength because I was like, oh, I'm alone. I'm a pioneer.
Oh,
But
yeah,
looking
yeah,
back, yeah, but looking back at it, I wish I had a community for sure. Having a community, because the thing is, man, like when you're coming up, like all you look for is there somebody else like me, similar to what I'm trying to do, kind of on the same path as me. That's all you're desperately looking for that, right? And if you see somebody else do it, it all of a sudden gives what you're doing that much more credibility, right? It just
yeah,
does.
hopefully. Yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully. Yeah, I'm a little bit apprehensive about any other students in my class knowing very much about this project, podcast and YouTube channel and other area of expertise, because I know I know what I'm up against. So
No, for sure.
there's yeah.
But then again, like sorry, not trying to be like, ooh, like you can use me as an example, but there you go. Like
Oh, I do. Oh,
that's
I sprinkle that on everything. And it's fun.
right,
It's fun.
right. So, but then you just basically go, cool. There's one guy who didn't fail miserably, and there you go. So I'm gonna follow his path. Like that's what I'm saying. If I had that coming up, like maybe I could have just shut up a lot of people. You know.
Gosh, yeah. Well, yeah, I can tell you, I've already like had a few people come along, and they don't shut up, but I have something else to listen to, and that's still super helpful. So,
Okay, well, I'm glad to hear it. And I mean, my expectations for you are very, very high. So
um, with my dad has something good to say. I'm getting really tired right now, but it's like, from whom much is expected, much is given, and it's true the opposite way. To whom much is given, much is expected. But depending on which order you put those in, it's either comforting or super intimidating.
you got it. Yeah, you're wiser than I was at this stage, so you'll do it.
All right, guys.
All
Well,
right.
thanks everyone for listening. Rayhan, thanks for the time. Thanks for the chat. Hopefully, we have an interview coming up soon. And in the meantime, next time we talk, I'll have had my first day of medical school.
For sure. We're looking forward to hearing about them. You have a great night, okay?
All right, you too. Take care, man.
All right, bye.